fell into a trap inside a dungeon and are losing a lot of blood. The hole is bigger than the hole of the OnlyFans girl. Everything started on Earth with a mass teleportation. And when they looked, several confused people were already in this new world. A cute rabbit appears, warning them that they were invited to a game. But obviously, this was a game of life or death. You need to die to learn how to play, and now it's time to start. With only a few weapons given by the rabbit, monsters quickly emerged. The problem didn't stop there. Fights among humans began due to hunger, and the chubby ones didn't want to share anything. Our hero had gained a skill considered useless, and was therefore mistreated. His ability to purify impurities didn't help at all at that moment. This would be a night when the protagonist would sleep hungry. The next day, a giant ball rolling behind several survivors. While they ran, some died, stepping on traps along the way. Running from the ball trying to kill you without a rearview mirror was complicated. The boy who had slept with an empty stomach couldn't hold on much longer. And to top it off, he just stepped on a trap. Here we return to the point where the protagonist fell into the hole of the OnlyFans girls and the cursed rabbit was laughing at him. He still said that the chance of surviving this was 0%. Even the other adventurers who wanted to help the boy had to leave him behind, alone in the big dark hole while ketchup gushed out. Sometime later, they had completed the first phase and thought they could go home, but obviously there were several phases ahead. As a reward for completing phase 1, everyone received a full recovery. And this was no different for our protagonist in the hole, who was still alive by a miracle. But even though he was alive and 100% recovered, apparently he was forgotten and left behind. Suddenly the system warns that the dungeon is resetting. A hole closes again. Our hero named Dayun throws a stone and triggers the trap. In seconds, the rabbit appears, not understanding the situation. Why was this human still alive? Frustrated, he orders Dayun to call for his status so he can check. And it is possible to see that the boy's name no longer appears, meaning the dungeon has determined him as dead. Realizing that the boy is no longer a survivor, but a bug in this dungeon, the rabbit says he must follow the natural order and die slowly in that hole. But of course, the protagonist is not going to give up like that and opens his inventory. He needs to survive, no matter how. Initially, he thought about digging and getting out the other side far from the monsters. However, that was a very hard job without the proper tools. His hands were already full of calluses. Exhausted from the situation and with plenty of time, he wonders if it's possible to store dirt in the inventory. And to everyone's surprise, it is indeed possible. Now with renewed enthusiasm, he digs even more intensely, looking like an excavator. Thanks to the system, he can even see how much he has already dug, until a message appears saying that his first achievement was obtained and he gained a skill. His second skill was digging, and he could dig even faster if its level increased. The boy gets frustrated since he wanted a combat skill. How is he going to tell the others that he has a digging skill? Much later, the curious rabbit, wanting to know if the boy had already become worm food, decides to go down and look for him. Entering the boy's hole, he thinks the body must be nearby, but is surprised as the hole gets wider the further he goes in. And when he sees torches on the cave walls, he starts to panic. Suddenly, he finds the boy calmly whistling with a piece of meat in hand. The boy was not only alive and well-fed, he had also made an underground house complete with a bed and dining table. By taking dirt from the inventory and mixing it with a bed of water, he turned it into clay and could mold it into whatever he wanted. The rabbit, still not understanding, questions what the guy is doing. Dayun says he will serve the guests, obviously, but the rabbit doesn't care about that, and says that soon the boy will die alone. Suddenly, everything starts to shake, and it seems that the new participants have just completed phase 1. That is, everything the protagonist just created will disappear because the dungeon is resetting. He starts to run intensely to avoid being buried while the rabbit mocks him, but suddenly the shaking stops. Apparently, the rules of the dungeon no longer apply to the digging boy. The rabbit, still very furious, tells him not to get relaxed because he will probably be buried in the next reset, or even encounter a scary monster underground. Noticing how furious the rabbit is, he questions if the creature can't kill him with its own hands. The rabbit is tied up, he can only eliminate players, and the boy is no longer a player according to the dungeon. Suddenly the wall breaks and a lot of water starts to flood the tunnels. The rabbit gets excited again. The boy is swept away by the current, but returning to the spot, he realizes he will only survive if he plugs the hole. So he starts pulling a lot of dirt from his inventory and covers the hole. But this doesn't last long and starts to leak again, now forcing his ability. He takes a piece of dirt and shapes it into a brick. Even submerged, he is happy with the result. Shortly after, the rabbit can't stop being impressed. He made a dam using bricks and almost completely sealed off the water passage. Besides solving the initial problem, he also mocks the rabbit, saying he killed 2 birds with 1 stone and solved his water shortage issue. Now excited with his ability to shape dirt, he begins to modify the new well he just created. Soon a small wall and a lion's head were in the well as decoration, which even helped reduce the water pressure. The system starts to shine, and he completed a new achievement. His reward was fish placed in the well, and now he has infinite food. Everything the boy does makes the rabbit more and more irritated. When night fell, he was even roasting the fish he caught in the well. The rabbit is already losing hope while thinking that his magnificent dungeon is being used to roast food. Daeun, having a good heart, again offers food to the rabbit, and he even drools at the delicious smell of the food. But again, furious, he refuses and starts a new argument. Minutes later, the boy had already eaten and was sleeping peacefully in his room that he created himself. The problem was that the smell of the barbecue rose to the surface, and the monsters sensed it. Tremors were felt throughout the cave. Suddenly, a giant boar was in front of the boy who was dreaming of eating pork. In the middle of his dream, he suddenly wakes up and punches the boar in the face because he was still dreaming. But upon truly waking up and looking to the side, he realizes there was a very furious boar staring at him, but nowhere to run. He will have to face the beast. Quickly using his ability to shape dirt, he creates a barrier in front of him to defend against the boar's first strike. Then he takes the opportunity to gain distance and creates a new barrier. This time, it is more resistant. Even so, the creature breaks it with little effort. Furious that the boar just destroyed his room, he decides to use a new technique. A giant stone ball starts to come out of his inventory. The boy holds it with his hands, but obviously can't throw it very far, so he has to run away from the beast again. As he runs, he starts to salivate, thinking about the barbecue he could make with that boar. Then he raises another giant wall, and at the same time makes a hole for the boar to get trapped. At that moment, the poor little creature already knew it was going to become barbecue. Our excavator boy would have a nice feast. Then he starts throwing various stones from his inventory to eliminate the pig. The rabbit is once again incredulous. How can the boy use such a useless ability to swig? Only now does he realize how dangerous this boy is. The more time passes, the more furious he becomes with this bug in the dungeon. But now it's time to prepare the feast. In just a few minutes, he had completely deboned the boar. Even the animal's skull would be put to use. Turning into a high-quality frying pan, this was much lighter, and even had a handle to hold the rabbit. Seeing him store fat, warns that soon more monsters will come down due to all this smoke and smell. But this time, Daeun will be prepared. He will use the same method they used at the beginning against him. As soon as the creatures fall, it's certain death. And it didn't take long for the first prey to appear. The rabbit even starts shouting for the creature not to jump, but it was already too late. A new delicious food just fell right in front of him. Could this be an infinite farm of meat? And it didn't stop there. Little by little more of them were attracted. Sensing the smell of the meat, it jumped thinking it would be easy food. But it would be easy food for the protagonist who watched everything excitedly. Now that the meat and water were infinite, our once malnourished boy was starting to gain weight from eating so much. This is because every time the dungeon resets, new pigs fall from the sky. On the surface, one of the guys who left the protagonist behind but had also tried to help him earlier had piled up dozens of pigs after slaughtering them. He even earned an achievement after killing 100 of them, and with it a skill that gave him the strength of a boar. The only problem was leaving all that meat behind. This is because there are toxins in these monsters which makes the meat inedible. Only at that moment did they realize how much Dan's purification skill was missed. The boy who raised this question soon caught their attention. At first, everyone thought he was just a cook, but now they see how much the boy has missed since he was on the front lines solving everything. However, now it's too late. Daeun had all the comfort in the world. It was even raining food in his room. The meat was literally infinite, and that made no sense. Do the pig's brains reset along with the dungeon, and do they always fall into the same trap? Suddenly the rabbit gets startled. Daeun was lifting the boar with his own arms. Obviously, this must be due to the boar's strength skill since he is killing a boar every 5 minutes infinitely. However, when the dungeon resets the count too, so he is simply stronger now, but he knows he can earn this skill and get even stronger. Daeun climbs out of the hole and comments that he should build some kind of entrance. When he gets to the top, he is startled to see the rabbit looking downcast and asks what happened. The guy, completely dumbfounded, asks if the skill the protagonist mentioned was from the Horned Boar Slayer achievement. The AUN says yes, and a rabbit says it's impossible because you can only get it after killing 100 boars. The protagonist then explains that he caught the 100 boars with a trap. The rabbit says something is wrong because the dungeon has reset several times. The AUN asks what that has to do with it, and the guide replies that when the dungeon resets, the count also resets, and that there are only about 40 boars up there. The protagonist with a silly face comments that it seems his numbers stay the same even with the resets and asks if that wasn't supposed to happen. The little rabbit gets irritated and calls him a bug human while Da-Human wonders if all the monsters he kills will count. Thinking he might get another achievement when he kills 100 more, he reflects that it will be difficult to do that a group. The guy gets irritated and says the protagonist is starting to look like a pig mal that he's eating them every day. Da-Human asks if there's a weight change to stall the rabbit. Doesn't know. Meanwhile, outside it's a beautiful day. On a tree branch, a squirrel walks near a nest. He's gnawing on a bone, until he accidentally drops it. Then he quickly descends from the tree. But when he gets down, he sees a hole in the ground near the tree, and he tenses up when he realizes his bone fell straight into that hole. He stares a bit before entering. After a while, he comes out of a small hole. That leads directly into the protagonist's cave. He starts to explore, looking around. And when he gets to the kitchen, he's surprised to see all that. A little further ahead, he finds his Blorn, and he runs to grab it. But he is surprised to see the carcass of the horned boar. It was love at first sight. Sometime later, he returns to the tree all excited, with a twinkle in his eyes. More time passed, and he returned to the hole. And this repeated day and night, without the other squirrels knowing. It had become routine. He entered the cave all calm, and there were always more bones there. So he ate them all, until he saw something, a bowl full of bones. And he went straight to eat what was in it too. He picked up a bone from the bowl without hesitation. He was a little intrigued by it, but it only took one bite to feel a flavor explosion, and he was ecstatic. He soon started eating more and more amazed. He continued eating the bones from the bowl, until he notices something. The bull was on top of the protagonist. Then he is worried when he remembers the old squirrel teaching that humans are dangerous, and he starts to leave, afraid that the protagonist will get up and attack him. But the temptation of the bull is too strong. He tries to resist. He makes a determined look, focused. But he goes back to eating the bones. The AUN, who is pretending to sleep, sees this and is happy. Then he celebrates that he found another living being after spending once living alone in that cave, and says it's good that the squirrel feeds on bones because he is very careful and didn't know how to approach him. While DAUN is being careful thinking about how to make friends, the squirrel realizes he is awake. The protagonist worries that he might run away, but the squirrel continues eating the bones. DAUN is moved by so much cuteness, so he slowly tries to pet him. The little squirrel notices and lets him. DAUN is all happy that it worked, and again a little appears. The system shows the achievement of Earth's squirrel friend for having tamed the little squirrel, and then says the dungeon admires this unexpected friendship. The A-human wonders that they give these things out regularly and remembers that when he was with the group he couldn't get any. And he thinks about his new achievement and says he doesn't know if it's worth anything, but thanks the little squirrel for calling him a friend. Then he starts thinking about using POKK and YU with the name of the little animal, since that's the sound it makes. The little squirrel seems to like the name. DAUN is astonished to see that POKK and YU apparently understands him and wonders if it's the reward for the achievement. Then he tells the little squirrel to sit and even thinks that maybe it's hard for him to understand. But POKK and YU sits down right after. He's impressed to see that the squirrel really understands him and even asks him to hold his hand. And then he asks POKK, "Well, you've got in a minute." At that instant, the squirrel jumps from his hand. DA even wonders if he didn't understand. But POKK, YU waits for the protagonist, and then points in the direction indicating for DAUN to follow him. The protagonist then sees the wall through which POKK and YU entered and uses his digging ability to enlarge the hole. As he climbs through the tunnel, he wonders if the squirrel noticed that entrance because it's smaller. Then he remembers that every time he tried to dig an exit, he ended up facing stone walls. DAUN dug several tunnels looking for an exit and was almost giving up. However, he's surprised when he notices something. It's already possible to see a tree root where POKK entered. Then DAUN gets emotional to see that you will finally be able to get out, and soon celebrates saying that you will finally be able to have some hope. He knows that if he climbs the roots, he'll be able to get outside. As he continues climbing, the protagonist is excited because he will finally be able to end this life under the earth. He can already see the sunlight, so he keeps climbing. After so much time, he finally can see the outside world again, with birds singing in the sky and the soft grass on the ground. DAUN can sing in the sky with that view, and starts to cry with emotion for finally being able to see the sky full of clouds and grass that seems endless. He says it's just a normal landscape with some sheep, but it seems so different. While he says it's welcoming and friendly, his speech is interrupted when he sees one of the little sheep submay attacked by a fierce wolf. The NUN gets nervous and says that survival of the fierce is also part of nature, while there are several predatory it looks in the forest, as the other wolves starts anew. The kid's feel of being alive didn't need to be so realistic. The protagonist starts to sweat coldly and turns pale because he knows that packs of wolves are known for having no mercy, and then thinks it's unfair to die right after escaping. The wolves start to growl and go on the attack. DAUN already prepares for the worst. Then he crouches, but the wolves pass straight by. He doesn't understand, and he is relieved because the wolves were focused on the sheep and didn't see him. He asks if PLKKYU knows another way because that place doesn't seem safe. But right behind him, another wolf appears. DAUN tries to stay calm, thinking that this one's attention is also on the sheep, but the wolf has its eye on the protagonist. DAUN runs back through the hole, yelling at the wolf and calling it an idiot. The protagonist says the entrance is too tight for the monster to enter, but it didn't take long for the wolf to break everything and manage to enter. At that moment, despair hits Daun, who keeps running and apologizing for calling the monster an idiot. He realizes the tumbles are too narrow and there's no escape. Then Daun opens the inventory and decides that since it's just one wolf, he'll finish it off. Aang starts to build a wall, thinking that compared to the bore of the wolf is much weaker. But before he could finish his thought, the wolf leaps and attacks him, which draws blood from Daun. He can't leave him. The wolf is extremely fast. Daun realizes his situation is bad. The wolf missed that blow but will attack again. The protagonist wonders if he will be able to escape or if there's another way. And then he realizes he will be able to run for long, and then he has to end this. Then an idea comes to his mind. He says he still has that, and there's nothing more he can do. The wolf leaps to attack him again. Daun says it's him or the monster while the blue aura begins to emanate. Then he lands a powerful punch on the wolf after activating the strength of the horned boar. The monster is thrown far away with Daun's punch. Is even pressed and wonders if he hit. He realizes the effect of the skill is incredible. The system shows that his physical attributes will be temporarily doubled. Then Daun confirms that now that he tried to fight, he knows his skill is indeed incredible. But the wolf gets up angry. The protagonist knows he managed to damage the monster. But he's sad it wasn't a one-hit kill. The system shows there are 7 seconds left of the skill, and Daun thinks to himself that the duration is his biggest weakness. And then with 6 seconds left, he has no time to waste and charges with everything. The wolf prepares for the attack. But Daun is faster and manages to jump and dodge to the side of the monster. Before the wolf could react, the protagonist lands another powerful punch on the wolf's ribs. And with a determined look, he hopes the monster dies. Daun continues to deliver a barrage of punches. So many punches that dust rises even from the outside. The protagonist is already tired, and the system shows there are still 3 seconds left. But the wolf is still standing. Again it charges, but Daun manages to dodge with a leap. Then he quickly opens the inventory, falls one of the spikes while there are 2 seconds left, and yells for the wolf to die already as he prepares to attack with the spike. The monster growls at him, but Daun manages to hit the spike on the wolf, but the monster attacks him at its tail. This attack ends up throwing the protagonist against the wall. Here on the spike embedded in its neck, the wolf is still alive, while Daun wonders how this damn thing has so much energy, and says this won't end easily. The system shows that the strength of the boar is on a cooldown of 99 seconds. A wolf stares at him angrily, but Daun has understood the pattern of a monster. Its most dangerous attack is when it leaps to slash using its front claws. But after that, this attack is on cooldown. The protagonist asks if they can him a truce for just 90 seconds, but the wolf watches another attack. As Daun prepares to launch his last attack, the monster is about to bite him. At that moment, the protagonist says he should have used his paw. Then before the wolf could bite him, Daun uses the digging ability right into the wolf's mouth, and the monster is caught by surprise. Sometime later in the cave, the guide appears wondering what happened since the protagonist isn't making meat. He says something is wrong, and says that Daun must be doing something bad until he finds him. The rabbit can't believe that the protagonist is dressed in bone armor. Daun says the armor turned out quite good for something made in a day. He says he made it because many dangerous things happen these days. The guide is shocked to see the skull of the plains wolf and wonders if Daun finally found a way up there. The protagonist says yes, and the rabbit already asks why he is still there. Then he says it must be because that place is comfortable and tells Daun to keep living there. Then he comments that the protagonist even got a little pet. But Daun to Kermit says he will leave. However, he cannot leave without preparing as he only survived by pure luck. Because of the danger, the rabbit tells him to stay there. Then Daun says he still plans to use the base for a while. Now that the problems are clear, he needs to start making his preparations. The rabbit asks Daun to just give up and die, but ends up leaving the protagonist in a good mood, and the rabbit calls him a curse bug. Sometime later, Daun is training with the strength of the boar, lifting weights, and running while thinking to himself that the more he increases his physical stats, the stronger the skill's increase will be. Since he is using the skill a lot, the system shows that its level has increased and even the duration and cooldown have improved. Daun reflects that he was lucky last time, but walls move in packs, and even if he tries to face them one by one, there are no guarantees that it will work. He uses a slaughtered boar as a punching bag, while thinking that he has to get stronger. The system shows that the strength of the boar has risen to level 3, making the physical stats stronger, the duration longer, and the cooldown shorter again. Then he activates the skill and delivers a series of punches to the boar. Daun lands a powerful punch. With a determined look, he says he will no longer run away. In the forests, some wolves are quite carefree until they notice something coming their way. Suddenly, Daun jumps out of the bushes. He's happy to find only 2 wolves. Then the protagonist activates the strength of the boar and throws a thorn at one of them. The other manages to dodge and already advances towards Daun. He then says he will show the result of his training and lands a punch that makes the monster fly and hit a tree. The impact was so strong that it destroyed the tree. Right behind the protagonist appears the first wolf about to bite him, but he has already noticed and says he knew it wouldn't die with just one hit. Then he lands another punch on the wolf and says he will hit it as many times as necessary. While the monster is thrown to the ground, the second wolf gets up. During the fight, the guide realizes that he has become very strong, and D.A. Human himself feels full of power and wonders if this feeling means he is strong. He then says he feels he won't lose and wonders if he has become unbelievably strong. But the rabbit cuts his wave and says he's not that much since C.U.N. could kill 10 wolves in a second. D.A.U.N. says anyone is weak compared to C.U.N., but the rabbit says the boy Jan-Du-Hu killed 3 wolves alone. Suddenly, one of the wolves starts to howl, and the rabbit mocks the protagonist, saying that now the pack is coming. He warns that about 3 wolves are coming and that D.A.U.N. is lucky because usually there are more than 5. Then he asks if the protagonist will be able to defeat them all before the skill's time runs out and asks him to show his power. Da-Yuan then asks if the guide knows what the best part of his skill is. Then he says it's the increase in physical stats that is now 2.4x, which means he can run away 2.4x faster than normal. The guide is incredulous and asks if he's really going to run away. Then he asks if the protagonist doesn't have the honor to face them. But D.A.U.N. says he only cares about something called life. Right after that, he jumps back into the cave hole. The rabbit says that usually players get sus and fight so much that they end up dying. Then he gets angry and tells the wolves to attack that hole. But D.A.U.N. makes an earth wall and prevents them from entering. The monsters even try to dig, but it doesn't work. Leon the guide trembling with rage. He yells, calling the protagonist a damned bug player, and swears that one day he will kill him. Inside the cave, the AUN says he managed to find some isolated wolves thanks to POK KVN but now that they are in a pack, it's not easy to deal with, and then wonders what to do. He made 7 escape routes in the area where there are no stone walls, and now he knows he can withstand fighting more than 2 wolves. But he is worried that something unexpected will happen like last time, and he won't be able to close the entrance in time. Even if he flees to the hole, there's nowhere he can hide. So he tells POKK of YU that he has no choice but to need his help. DAUN asks his little squirrel to find the wolves that have separated from the pack, and tells him not to get too close and to be careful. Then he says he will start the preparations. Outside, there are 3 wolves that have just hunted his sheep. DAUN is going to put his plan to practice and says the distance is perfect. Then he opens the inventory. Meanwhile, the guide is watching, asking if he is some kind of mole for having made so many holes in the region. The protagonist says the rabbit has this horrible habit of appearing behind people. The guy then grumbles and says the most important thing is to know what DAUN is going to do and asks if he's going to shoot a laser beam or something like that. Then the protagonist says it's almost that and says this is his long-range combat art. The rabbit says he doesn't have any such skill, but DAUN says it's possible to throw earth balls using the strength of the boar. Then he activates the skill and throws a thorn as if it were a spear, saying this is the safety-first attack. The wolves are far away and unconcerned, until the attack passes close but doesn't hit any of the monsters. The rabbit starts laughing and asks if DAUN didn't mean wolves, safety first. The protagonist throws another spear and misses again. Then the guide says it looks like it's going to end in hand-to-hand combat, and that's what they call lack of experience. The plains wolves have the highest agility in Phase 1, and that distance is no problem for that. DAUN says that despite this, they can't dodge in the air. So he throws the earth balls and says it's going as he planned. The can asks if he really thinks this is going to work, and says there's no point in trying to buy time with earth balls because they'll destroy them in an instant. But a ball hits the wolf right in the face. The guide is astonished and can't believe it. DAUN says the rabbit is underestimating the balls too much and that earth is heavier than he thinks. Then he says he used his dating ability to increase their density to the point of weighing 20 kilograms. And with the strength of the paw, he can throw them as if they were bowling balls. The guide is again shocked and can't believe those balls weigh 20 kilograms. In a few seconds, DAUN managed to knock down 2 walls. Only the last one remains. Then the rabbit comments that wolves hunt in groups and they have good teamwork, while DAUM has his back turned. A third wolf weeps and attacks from behind when the guide thinks it was checkmate. However, he managed to defend himself from the attack by placing his arms in the way. But he was still thrown far away while the wolf waited to see what happened. Still recovering from the beast's charge, he didn't notice that the wolf was approaching to feast on him. And the rabbit celebrated because he wanted that annoying player to go to heaven soon. Hoping the rabbit asked the wolf to attack him immediately and finish the guy off. The rabbit laughed at the scene as the good sad as he is. Dallin was now inside the wolf's jaws. As the fierce attack continued, the rabbit watched everything from afar, hoping that things would go as he planned. However, something unexpected happened. The wolf felt its teeth breaking. The rabbit, observing the scene, expected anything but that. Dallin's armor was more resistant than the beast's teeth and caused him to break when biting. Taking advantage of the distraction, he managed to move his arms enough to free himself a bit from that dangerous mouth. He He was finally in a safer position while the wolf tried to recover from the damage inflicted on itself. Dahlin was pleased with the effectiveness of that armor, and if it weren't for it, he would have become a snack. The horned boars are the most powerful beasts of that level. The wolf's fangs are nothing compared to those bones. Even so, the force was felt by the guy's body, and he suffered moderate damage. The status window signaled that he still had 8 seconds to use the Borzaboni. At that moment, he tried to regain his calm to plan an attack. The time was more than enough, and he started manipulating something in his hands. Dailun with the Earth Sphere assumed a posture to throw it at the wolf. Finally, he was prepared to do it. With the wolf in his sights, Dahlin threw the projectile towards the injured wolf. A great explosion occurred in the forest. The rabbit, still watching, didn't like the way things had turned out. He then asked if the guy had finished off a wolf that lay in front of him. Definitely, this was not the result desired by the rabbit, who wanted the player in wolf's place. Da'an's strategy was to use a chain of tunnels, attack stray wolves, and then flee. That strategy is definitely efficient, but at a certain point they began to be vigilant with the tunnels. They just didn't expect to be watched by the squirrel, who promptly relayed the information to his friend. Using it, he took the opportunity to train when an attack became too risky. The training caused his skill to level up more and more until the wolves were no longer able to resist. The forest apparently was at peace, but within it, Dahlin was controlling the wolf population. The rabbit couldn't believe that human was still alive. Biagone felt for and only grew, as did the desire to resolve the situation himself, and he said the guy was a coward for the way he attacked them. But his armor was already almost completely destroyed, and it was necessary to keep him safe. He decided to discard it and might make another one in the future. Who knows? Don noticed that the day was very calm, and they should have already arrived because of the howls, for he knew he hadn't finished off all the wolves in the forest. The rabbit was completely unable to hide the noise, and Dahlin asked what was wrong with him. Then he happily asked if he had finished off all the wolves. The rabbit said he was a coward and would soon die while he celebrated being able to deal with all the wolves. And he also said that if he found other players, he should tell them where they were, but the rabbit wished he would perish and said he wouldn't do that. Dahlin celebrated the success of his strategy and was now ready to move on to the next step. He needed to defeat the boss, but knew he couldn't do it alone. So he needed to find more players and join them. Now he was in the Plains Forest. With 10 days left until the reset, he imagined they would soon pass through there, but he recognized they would be problematic if they were far away. A loud sound echoed through the forest. In the middle of it, there was a small clearing. In that clearing, a group of players was confronting a pack of wolves. They knew the wolves were fierce, and on that occasion, there were many of them. One of the players blamed the situation on his colleague, and they argued. The rabbit passed by there, completely downcast. He looked at the group of players and realized they were having the expected tense behavior. To him, that was what was missing in the dungeon. More tension. The wolves advanced towards the people. The rabbit rejoiced in the scene and hoped the pack would take care of everyone. He wanted no player to remain so that Dahlin would have no hope of getting out of there or living for long. One of the wolves is thrown far away. A player with an axe is responsible for it, and it was just as the rabbit imagined. Not everyone is weak. He noticed that the old man was hiding ability for emergency situations. Windblade. The stronger the weapon is sworn, the more damage it inflicts. However, this is an ability that can also hit allies. The players ask him to restrain himself as he could hit them too, but the old man ignores them. Either he does that, or everyone becomes a snack. Only the strongest survive. The rabbit loved it. This was the spirit of the dungeon. The most cruel monsters are always the humans. The rabbit hopes that the reckless one ends up killing all his allies because if everyone dies, Dahlin will be left alone. But the guy is planning his life thinking he should go to a higher place. Dahlin is happy to have gotten out, but doesn't know what to do now. The rabbit, what taken to him? He asks Pakyu if he could imagine what the others might be. He wants to know where the humans are, and the squirrel becomes thoughtful. But he gave up insisting because he knows his friend doesn't know everything. He can't search because it might put him in danger, but he also can't face the boss alone. He thinks about building something to help him find them, like an observatory. It's a waste to think too much and not execute, and he is confident in his building skills. And for that, he'll need to get above the tree canopy. So if he started summoning earth bricks, the walls will be made of earth, and it will be easier to do since he has experience with the material. It might collapse since there's no cement, but he learned a technique that could reduce this risk. He brings his hand close to the bricks. He can change the shape of the object with his hand and intends to fuse the bricks with his digging technique. It's not a stack of bricks, but rather earth, and it won't collapse so easily. By the end of the day, he managed to accomplish a lot and was quite tired. And by 10 hours, he completed the task. He looks up the sky from where he stands, and he contemplates the beauty of the forming twilight. Far away, blood flies through the sky. The rabbit roots for the conflict and says they'll eat that food if they want to fight tomorrow. He is pleased that the players have adapted well to the game, and he comes across a type of person he doesn't like, who is looting a body. He thinks that this player must have many items in his inventory. The guy doesn't know, and the rabbit introduces himself as the guide of all this. He said he hadn't spoken to him, but that construction wasn't there yesterday. It's the first time the rabbit sees something like this. He is upset, and only one person there could be capable of that. At the top of the tower, Davlin is building something else higher. His hands are quite shaky, and he finally completes that small object. The rabbit appears beside him and asks what he is doing. He says that he scared him and that it's important, and that the rabbit should be working. But he says Dallin only does things that hinder his work. He said that Dallin has a lot of free time, that now he's stopped making tunnels and is making towers. Dallin asks the rabbit how long he thinks it took him to make that tower.